1202, the Human Factors Podcast. The podcast that covers all things about humans, technology, and particularly the bit in between.
And welcome to this episode of 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. And welcome back. I clearly took a bit of an unscheduled break in 2025 for a number of reasons, but I've got to be honest, mainly due to volume of work and kind of not being able to dedicate the time to do a good job to this and to this channel, to this podcast. And so rather than trying to beat myself up about it, and really got into that idea, I don't want to resent what I do here, because I enjoy and chatting to people, exploring different viewpoints. I didn't really want to have that bitterness, so I took a break, and I kind of expected that break just to be a couple of months. It turned out it was 12 months, and we didn't do anything at all within 2025. So wanted to come back and have some amazing guests with a tempo that we can really achieve. And so here we are. 2026 is upon us. And I've got to say thank you to everybody who has engaged and reached out, to ask where we are, what we're doing, but also to keep listening. I do keep a track of just, the numbers of people who've listened and engaged. And really, there's a slight irony that actually the numbers who listened didn't really drop off very much for me, despite me not being here. So people are obviously reaching into the back catalogue and engaging. So for that, I thank you, and hopefully with the new content we can re-energize what we're doing. So today we're going to explore the world of UX, or user experience, and in particular the use of UX in the defense domain. The relationship between UX and human factors itself is interesting. And that whole piece, the history and what people perceive the overlap to be, can actually be quite contentious. I've sat in more than one conference where this is a big discussion. There's some people who think that they're completely separate. They should not talk. They have their own drivers and disciplines. There's some people who suggest that really UX, that idea of user experience, is just a subset of human factors, and therefore, why are these people going off and creating a new discipline when we're here and this is what we've been doing already? But then there's others who think there's an overlap. It's almost like a Venn diagram, and I can bore people with my vase diagram approach, but I'll do that on another time. That there is an overlap, there is a chunky overlap, but then there are differences in approach, differences in why you're applying what you're doing, and really learning can be had from both sides, and working together is a real advantage. And I've spoken to quite a few UXers, certainly over the past couple of years, and we realize we've got a lot in common, but we have got a lot to learn from each other. And so, because it's such a meaty topic, I figured the reboot of the podcast, so let's be honest, this is a bit of a reboot. Let's start with a big topic. Let's hit this topic of UX. And given my background and the background of my guest, the use of UX in defense, when we look at the sort of interfaces we're playing with there, are not necessarily the sexiest of things. And perhaps we can investigate, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I've got experience of some human factors practitioners who say, well, it's in defense. You don't need it to look good. You don't need it to engage within a way that you need to delight your user. Whereas I am slightly the other side of the fence of if we spend a fair more time in making it something that they like and enjoy using, then maybe we'll have increased usage rates. But I can't talk about this on my own. Really, I am an HFer with a strong leaning into HCI design, but UX itself, I think we need to look at bringing some other expertise, some people who actually know what they're talking about. So, and today's guest is a great example of that. I first met them in around 2019. I was supporting an event with the CIHF and sharing my experiences in using agile approaches, and where I thought UX fit into this picture and that sort of stuff. And in particular, I was reflecting on the characteristics of military personnel and the challenges I, as a human factors practitioner, face, including, if you've got longer projects, then they have postings and they disappear every 2 to 3 years, and they have different backgrounds, they have a very different culture, and personal drivers and things like that. And I guess, and I probably do owe an apology in a moment. I was probably a bit direct in the way that I described that, and today's guest, he was in the audience, and he's one of the military people there, and actually, thankfully, he supported my points, or at least reflected on my points in good humour, rather than just throwing his stuff at me or storming out of the room. So I'm really pleased that he's actually here today, to reflect on his journey with UX in defence, and to also share with us his reflection, his learning. So, Matt Odell, who's the founder of MILUX, welcome to the podcast.
Hey Barry, thanks very much for inviting me on. Looking forward to the discussion.
So, no, it's fantastic to have you, especially as the first guest of 26 and the first guest of the after my period of absence. So, for those people who are watching and listening, can you just give us a bit of an intro into yourself? Who are you and what do you do, sort of on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, certainly, Barry. So I run a micro consultancy called MILUX, Military User Experience. Wasn't very creative with the name, but hey, keep it simple. And I suppose on a day-to-day basis, my job is split between running the business, trying to find new business, and all of the day-to-day activity that most business owners have, which is the slightly duller stuff, and then getting out there and interacting with end users or defense companies that are building products for defense, and asking those sort of difficult questions of what problem are you trying to solve, what's the value are you trying to bring to the user, and sort of really helping them understand the outcomes the users are trying to achieve, so that they don't build the wrong thing.
So you obviously are doing this now, as I mentioned in the bit of intro. You used to wear uniform full time. I know you still do participate in such things. So where did this all come from? Where was how did young Matt get to where he is now?
I suppose it comes from that. I'm of the generation where I started my military career with a sort of Nokia 3310, and throughout those following years, iPhones were introduced. The web started to sort of really kick off with the applications, and there was more and more that I could do outside of the army world than I could do inside of the army world. Yet, I suppose this was the subtle creep up of poor user experience, where things weren't changing. Yeah. So I was very much recognized that technology was moving really quickly, and I was achieving these good experiences outside of defense, but I didn't really understand it as a concept until I met you. Until I was in that job as SO2 Morpheus user capability, I think was the final name that role had. But I was essentially spending 2 to 3 days a week living and working with the human factors engineers and user experience professionals that were subcontracted into General Dynamics. And really, I learned a huge amount. And yes, very much that debate of human factors and UX. And it was great to see a team of, I suppose, fully civvy-based UX professionals with no engineering background and human factors engineers working together. And I suppose that was just the path of sort of the start of my journey of really learning about user experience and why it was so important. And then since then, it's led me down a route of sort of lean, agile, and I suppose delivery management, and more now so in the overarching product space.
Cool. I mean, just for those people who are perhaps not aware, and obviously we need to respect security and all that sort of stuff. But obviously, you joined the military at some point, and then you go through your career and end up being a responsible user for a system like Morpheus, which in very large handfuls is a comm system. How do you get to that position of growth through your career, where you're suddenly the person who is responsible for, or being that person who's saying, I am your military user. How does that bit of career happen?
That's a really good question. So I fixed my commanding officer's iPod when we were in Iraq back in 2007. No, so that's really, I suppose, the heart of the origin story. And then that showed, as an infantry officer, I had a slightly technical bent. After that led me on the path to become the regimental signals officer for the unit. And then I did an applications manager job and SO3 tactical systems, so a captain's job, before I went and did the battle space technology course, and then subsequently the command staff college, and then into the Morpheus job. So I suppose what happened is I was gaining little nuggets of actual end user experience as a infantry platoon commander, company 2IC. So I was getting the actual operational experience. At the same time, I was then getting the technology experience and learning about acquisition. So that's post staff college, when I turned up to be SO2 Morpheus requirements, then the capability, user capability. I will openly confess now, looking back, I didn't really know what I was doing. I would say, in hindsight, I had the role of a product manager.
Yeah.
So there was a requirements manager in the delivery team, but I now know that I was that interface between the users, the business, the delivery team, and then the suppliers. So I would probably label that now as a product manager. But most of the journey came from the spare hours outside of work. So I was led significantly by the human factors engineers, UX experts in General Dynamics. This is the stuff I need you to do. And it was the realization what I was good at was articulating what the users were trying to do, because I had done it. So I was a really keen advocate for getting the end users in, getting out of General Dynamics to visit the end users, and just trying to bring those engineers really close together with the end users so they could explain it. Because I also learned that just because I'd done the job once doesn't mean that I was an active user and understood it. So I'd got my own biases. So in terms of the learning journey, I look back at the very start of that role. I know what the role description should have been, but I think I was inadequately prepared to do it. But I like to think I had the right mindset to just go out there and act like a sponge and try and learn from all of the experts I did bump into along the way.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's given us a really good feel for where this discussion is going to go. So what we're going to do is take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back and really dive into this UX thing properly. So we'll be right back after this.
You are listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. We wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for your support. You can help further by rating us through your podcast provider, sharing us through social media, and telling your friends and colleagues. Let's work together in raising awareness of the value in putting users at the center of what we do.
And welcome back. We're here chatting with Matt Odell from MILUX and about the use of UX in defense. So, Matt, you've given us a bit of an intro about how you got into the UX world in the defense space. So how did you find, I guess, UX in itself? Because when you were playing around with that idea and being informed, being that potentially, that product representative, you guys were really doing new stuff. So there wasn't a playbook, because nobody, certainly in the defense side, nobody had done it yet. There was only one other, as far as I was aware, project actually working in that, trying to bring in UX and agile at that point, and that was mine, and which is one of the reasons why we met. But you guys, I think, were doing it bigger and probably better than what we were. So as that military person coming in, how did you find, how was it, how did you transition into it, and what made it good for you?
I suppose, how did I transition into it? The army postings of this is not the job you applied for, but you're doing this job anyway. No, I think I took to it really quickly, and it was because of the open-mindedness of the team that I was working with. And actually, one of the things that really does help is, and I may argue against this later, is lack of domain knowledge.
Right.
So if you've got curious engineers, whether they or curious sort of teams, whether they are the content designers, the human factors engineer, the developers, if they are curious about the end user and what they're trying to achieve, as opposed to have a preconceived idea of what the solution is, it was really easy for me to fit into that space of, okay, my role is to really articulate the points around sort of desirability and value when it comes to the solution. And then the curious engineers were asking me the questions in order to build a solution. And I suppose it would have been a lot more difficult had it have been more of a traditional approach, which is we know what we're building, now let's try and make it usable. So there was a little bit inside some constraints, there was a little bit of freedom, I suppose, to almost think about user-centered design and look at how we might solve the problem in a different way. So that was really how I came to it, and I think I had a choice. So I didn't have to go and spend 3 days a week traveling to from Andover to Wales. I could have just done my job from Andover remotely and just checked in on Teams calls. I didn't have to fly out to Canada to be with the Canadian human factors UX team, and actually they have a slightly different way that they specialize in terms of their education, which was interesting. And I did that sort of once every 3 months for about 6 months, and it was one of those, I didn't have to do it, but I was actually personally getting value from the conversations I was having and the learning I was having. So it actually made it a really enjoyable experience. It was hard work, but yeah, it was an enjoyable experience. So I would say it kind of, because everybody was aligned to trying to make it better than it was, and we all recognized what the current communication system was like. It felt like a team effort, and therefore we were all about trying to make it better for the end user.
Were you really aware at the time that you were breaking the mold? Were you, that you were trailblazing in effect, or did it just feel like day job, and then it was a reflection afterwards?
So I didn't think I was, because I'd just come from the Battlespace Technology course and Staff College, where the modules we were doing there were looking at capability development from a sort of an outcome-based starting point.
Yeah.
So we were learning how we would apply sort of military acquisition to problems rather than deliver solutions. And so therefore I thought everybody was doing it, and it was only I suppose it was only later, or with a bit of reflection, I realized that some people had just gone straight into traditional requirements managers jobs.
Yeah.
And I have done one of them as a reservist since, which it was a stark contrast to actually how I do things in my day job, which, writing list of detailed prescribed requirements without ever engaging with the end users.
Yeah. You mentioned that the Canadian UX teams had a different education set. What could you lead into that a bit more?
So predominantly they were human factors engineers, but I think they had a more background in what I would think user experience and sort of user experience design. So they were exposed a lot more to the creative background of UX design than I think the UK based human factors engineers that had gone through our education system in this country had done. And that purely, I might be completely wrong, but at the time that was just my perception, is there was less of a divide between is it human factors and is it UX, the Canadian system seems to have them much more blended tightly together.
Yeah, no, I think that this, as I alluded to at the beginning, there is definitely a number of discussions over various types of beverages at a number of conferences about where the overlaps are, where the alignments are, but it sounds, I mean, certainly in the UK that happens quite a lot because I do it quite a lot. But it's good to hear it in other places that perhaps we're more in tune and aligned, which is great to hear. You obviously then when you left the military and set up MILUX, you decided obviously UX is now a passion for you. So why when you left, why have you gone down this route? What's really made you want to do it?
I suppose it's that maintaining that sense of purpose around supporting sort of warfighters in the best way that I possibly can. And I suppose I wanted to stay close to the military and do something when I left. And I didn't really want to go to a large prime, because my experience with the large primes is it was very and large programs was it was very difficult to actually design with the end user in mind, because of how contracts and alike were awarded. So I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. I'll do this myself. I want to continue working in defence, and actually, I think I'd learnt enough from my time working in that SO2 majors job, and with the team that I did, that I thought we could bring this back into Army headquarters. So I was very aware the amount I didn't know. And I think that was really key, because up until that point in the military, you're always told you're good at what you do and you're an expert. Whereas the time that I spent with the experts gave me that humility to go, I'm not an expert. And even now, it was nice of you to say I'm an expert in UX. I probably aren't. I'm not. We have a user researcher that works with us, I would say is an expert in it. I just know enough of how to employ them best in the defence space. So yeah, that's a long waffly answer to your question, but I wanted to stay close to defence. I could see the benefit. I could see the millions of pounds that were being spent on millions of pounds that were being spent on equipment that wouldn't solve a problem, but then also the increased sort of cognitive load and difficulties with delivering clunky, unintuitive, untrainable software and hardware that the defence seems to be very good at doing.
It is, because I mean there was definitely something there around defence capability is getting more complex, more complicated. You're not just putting simple bits of equipment in the hands of anybody and making it run. There's everything from physical to cyber. There's data is such a backbone of what we do that, I guess business as usual just cannot apply going forward. So in your engagement of UX and the different things you can do, what sort of activities do you enjoy? What brings the smile to your face?
Oh, I might as well just say it out loud. I enjoy proving people wrong. And why is that? So I'll use an example. One of our recent contracts, the statement of requirement came out, and we were contracted to deliver the thing that the sort of high headquarters thought was the exact thing that we had to deliver. But it was through sort of early prototyping and our discovery activity with the end user. We were able to give a design for sort of the downstream development team that was different to what we were asked to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
But we were able to point to the evidence that said this is the thing that they actually need, as opposed to the opinions of somebody else that thought it was. And I sort of summarized, I suppose, 3 months of work really quickly there. But we started prototyping with empty desks, ration boxes, shoe boxes, post-it notes. And as we learned more and we were able to move things around more, and add new components and sort of change the layout again, we were able to increase the sort of fidelity until we got to the point of saying, right, this prototype is probably good enough for you just now go and build something. But when we look back over the 4 different sort of sketches designs, they changed significantly from the thing that we were told that we had to build to the thing that we ended up sort of using as the bit that we passed from discovery down to delivery. So yeah, I enjoy proving people wrong, but I enjoy doing it with the right insights and the right data. That means that yes, we spent a little bit of time working this out, but we're now much more confident and we've de-risked the downstream delivery piece.
So how would you describe your toolbox at the moment? What sort of I guess UX activities do you usually deploy in, say, a discovery and things like that? What are the sort of things that we can see? What sort of things can we see you doing?
So in my toolbox, I deploy a senior user researcher who comes with a wealth of discovery, prototyping, ideation techniques. So we would start, I suppose, with helping define a value proposition. So the strategizer canvases are a go-to before we start any activity with end users. So let's define the value proposition. Let's understand the business model, because actually some of this comes into not just about the end users, but it's is this going to be viable and feasible for the business to do this thing in the first place? So we start with the strategizer canvases and thinking in that space. We use jobs to be done as a method to articulate, so outcome-driven innovation. So the method to create user journeys, sort of understand end-to-end processes. And again, this is we normally start with that as the as is. And then we would when we go to actually interact with the end users, it's I suppose a mixed bag of all of the mixed methods of quantitative and qualitative activity that we could do. And I found some of the things that I learned from the human factors engineers really come across, and I've done the same things, or it's sort of our user researcher has led activities with the same things. So whether it is interviews, focus groups, the card sorting, all of the different methods that you could do. We've actually narrowed it down. There's some that work better with inside the defense sector. Sort of my opinion, interviews, remote interviews, focus groups, they take users away from the context. So one of my favorite activities is sort of ethnographic research, where we can get into, say, a headquarters and just watch how people interact and the jobs that they're doing, because of that disconnect between what they say they do and what they actually do. So we've got a mixed set of methods to conduct the discovery work. And then when it comes into prototyping, we don't build software in MILUX, but I know people that build software. If we want to prototype software, we can now fantastic tools around vibe coding, so you can really quickly knock up, take a sketch. Actually, that sketch can now become an interactive real life application. And if it's in a low enough risk environment, well, you've actually built your application whilst you've been sitting next to the users doing the prototyping. So I suppose it all depends on what is the problem we're trying to solve. But I think if you were to look at our playbook and the methods that we have, they would align sort of very closely to what human factors engineers do as well.
Yeah. So as much as I'd love to say, I've worked in the defense sector a long time, and I'd love to say that yes, defense gets HF and UX, and it's all brilliant and it's amazing. But if I'm brutally honest, we're still not there. There is still so many programs that come through that have poor UX UI. The human factors element is still seen as an add-on. Where do you see UX adding value to defence? What would be your pitch, as it were, to senior people to say, look, we need to do this because of this?
I think in a resource-constrained environment like defence, where there is limited money, we are taking exceptionally big risks by building things that lack the ability to achieve outcomes. So we need to look at it from a risk perspective. And you need making big bets. So UX, I think UX and human factors, human-centered design, they only work if the correct delivery model has been chosen. So the age-old argument of waterfall versus agile, actually it comes down to risk. Do you know that the thing that you are going to build with the utmost certainty is going to solve that problem? If you don't, you need to test early and often, and get that feedback and get that data to make sure that you are building the right thing. So my pitch in is, it's probably not about creating a good user experience. It's about making sure that the outcomes, the desired outcomes the business wants to have, can be achieved. And at all stages in the delivery approach, we are reducing risk. And if you think viable, feasible, desirable, the only way we can really test desirable is by getting out and testing with people who are doing the job, which in itself makes it defense really complicated, because it won't be until we have to deploy and operate on the battlefield in an army sense will we really get the context of which they're operating in and get the feedback and the data. So everything that is done is a hypothesis built around a hypothesis. So my pitch is, I suppose, if you're going to do this properly, this is about saving money long term. You haven't got much money, so you can't afford to get it wrong, and you need to de-risk early. And the way you de-risk early is actually by changing the high level operating model to one that is a user-centered design operating model, as opposed to a traditional P3M approach.
So I guess if we are de-risking, then there's to explore that a little bit further. What are them risks? Because I guess we could look at and say, well, the risks are that the user doesn't use it. But is this not the military, where we turn around and say, no, you will use that piece of equipment? I mean, historically, that's what's happened. So what are the risks of what are people risks that you think that we need to address?
So this it opens up a really good conversation when, if you've only ever got one customer in defense as a business, and then you sell it into defense, and defense then mandates that the users use it, does it matter if it's difficult and it's hard? But I would argue where we need to look at things in sort of outcomes and outputs, and this plays nicely to a piece of work that I might be looking at shortly, which is quantifying lethality. So the British Army has been tasked with becoming 10 times more lethal. So what does that mean? And what is the cost of somebody's time and effort? So if a product is built that requires a week-long course because it is essentially unusable and difficult, you are taking a soldier away from doing something else for that week. So the opportunity cost of an already busy person has been sort of taken away from mandated training. If they have to keep pulling out books to refresh themselves and learn, or what is really critical is that part of that flow happens in 5 minutes, but we've made a system that it takes 5.5 minutes. We can start to quantify this against a business outcome, or an output, which is that increased lethality. So I think it's always really important to think there are costs with delivering sort of unusable, difficult to use things, and it's it no longer can we say, well, we just tell them they have to use it. It soldiers don't have a choice. Actually, we owe it to them when we're building products to mean that they don't think about the tool that they're using.
So, leaning back into what you said in the introduction bit, where you highlighted that you fixed your boss's iPod for him, there is an element there, I guess, as well as are we being driven more by the civilian applications? So, if we've got a piece of technology, if we can lean into how Windows does things, how Apple does things, and we reduce that learning, is it right that we should be leaning into that, or should we be designing our own defense elements to keep it, because defense is defense? How much should we be led by industry?
And again, another interesting point is lots of people used to tell me that defense was unique. And I don't think that's the case. I think say, the people that fly planes and go on the ships and boats, and those that go on the front line within the 3rd Division and sort of the field army, I think what they do as a business is completely different.
Okay.
So when it comes to those who are responsible for running defense, so looking after the people, building tools and the software, and going and sort of acquiring capability, they are no different to any other organization. I was really lucky a couple of years back where I got out of defense and I worked for as a value stream coach for an EV charging company. They have the same problems as defense has, but their context that their users are operating in is in a different way. So there's a huge amount we can learn from other sectors about how you go about designing and building capability. And I think, yeah, it comes back to the operational context might be different, what the users are trying to do, but how we build something for them, we should be leveraging the good practices that are emerging sort of anywhere else outside of defense.
So I guess it also goes back to something you were mentioning earlier as well about the stuff that you were doing outside of your defense job, engaging with software and all that sort of stuff, and then having to do different stuff inside the wire. Are people's careers now contributing to the way that we approach UX? So we don't necessarily we don't join the military and then stay in there all of our lives anymore, staying for your full 22 and then come out. People come in for shorter periods of time and have that almost that slightly more transactional relationship than this is my life thing. Do you think that plays a part into it, or am I talking complete codswallop?
I don't know. I think we've yet to see, I can't remember, zigzag careers, I think it was something it was called, but we've yet to see that apply to the level of which decision makers in terms of delivery, projects, programs, initiatives sit. So it's not uncommon for soldiers and junior ranks to leave the military, do a bit of something outside in civilian world, and then come back in and then sort of bounce in and out. But we don't see that in probably enough at the higher levels. And one of, I suppose, my view is that if you join the military to do something in green, you should be a specialist at doing that. So really stay into your expertise in your swim lane. So me, armored infantry background, I can talk quite a lot about armored infantry and how it operates, and how you would go up to sort of brigade level with an armored infantry. But then if you ask me to be a solution architect or human factors engineer, that's not my skill set. So immediately I drop down. So it's about making sure you've got the right contract and civil service support that are then the experts to bring their expertise into the field, and that'll be until we can really get people out of defense for a meaningful time to industry to learn and then bring those learnings back in. And cynically, I think that we send people out, they learn with and they get exposed to what happens outside in industry. They come back in and they realize the system is so structured and unchangeable that they just become more frustrated and then ultimately leaving the medium to long term. So
that's fair. So I guess if we strongly advocate in the use of UX, it can reduce risk, it can add value, it save money. Why are we not doing it? What's blocking us?
So you now get into the later stages of my journey. So I really start. So would I call MILUX if I was to start again? Probably not, because I think I was curious when I met you about Agile. And about the same time, someone told me you can't do Agile in defense. So I went, okay, let me go and find out. So whilst I'm a keen advocate for UX and user-centered design, it comes now from a place of delivery. And from delivery, it comes down to the system and the operating models that enable it to happen. So if we look at defense operating model at the moment with the multiple silos and how money gets awarded and to projects and programs, and how in order to get the money you need to have clear requirements to start with, and then you need to commit that money for the next 5 years or risk losing it. All of those behaviors and that structure drives a system which can't handle uncertainty very well. So I've dived really deep into delivery management, so the Kanban methods, became a Kanban trainer, agile coach, enterprise coach, and have been really lucky outside of defense, taking an organization on a lean portfolio transformation to really be focused on the end user, the customer, in how they design their operating model. And that is such a seismic shift for defense to do, that is, I think that's the blocker, because all we can then do at the moment, all we can really achieve is trying to make something that's already predetermined usable. What we aren't able to do is go right further upstream in the process and look at that problem and go, are we solving this problem in the right way? What are the other ways that we could do it? Can we experiment with things that we might just discard because they're not going to give us that? They might solve the problem, but they're not going to do it in a way that is viable for the business.
If we just solve that, then genius. That's crack on. The point you make around like sort of agile and stuff is interesting, and Scrum, and because again that's where we initially touched base and stuff, and I was very excited because I'd managed to implement a level of agile and Scrum in a place where I got told I just couldn't, and then I'd been on a journey to sort of say, well, actually you can't do full Scrum or Agile because the whole organization has to do it and the whole organization refuses. But now this is now going on 10, 15 years or so, and the defense in itself talks Agile, talks Scrum, but still works in waterfall. So why, and then there's so many meetings that you have, right? We're going to have a stand up, we're going to have a da-da-da. So it's using the words, but it's still not embracing it, or doing it. Do you think that we should do it, or do you think defense actually stick to what you do it in waterfall and let people like yourself come and show how we can deliver within that organization? But actually defense, defense as an organization is just not going to change. Fix it, Matt. Come on.
Is it unfixable? So I was going to bring this up probably a bit later on in terms of the concept that human factors and UX are different.
Yeah.
No, they're just different names. I think if you put everybody in the room and you say, what are we trying to achieve? We're all trying to achieve the same thing, which is to enable an end user to be able to do the thing they're trying to do as efficiently and effectively as they possibly can. And I suppose with the human factors bent to make sure they can do it safely at the same time. I see the same thing when it comes down to agile method wars. Is it Scrum? Is it Scaled Agile Framework? Is it less? It doesn't matter. All we're trying to do is to deliver value to your customer, your user, and to the business. So they're all in really heavily linked, and it becomes really easy to say, I've come at this from this place, so therefore I'm nailing my sort of flag to the mast and saying I'm Scrum. Well, I'm a human factors engineer. I'm a UX professional. No. These are the models of which you bring to trying to achieve that outcome.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think there has to be a fundamental shift from how things are being delivered now to something that is leaner and more agile in the future. And it's not just about saying the words. It's then just not about doing the agile theater of having the events and running through the sort of the show. It's actually having the behaviors, the right policies in place, the right governance structure, financing. So defense is heavily constrained by money and how the money flows. Actually moving to a more lean portfolio way of committing money to solve problems rather than to deliver capability, forgetting about the CDEL and RDEL sort of arguments, because I suppose I don't think you run your business in the same way that the defense does. I certainly don't have capital line and a resource line, or it's thinking that knowledge and learning is a capital asset. It's not. So if you pay some contractors to run some usability tests and you get a report back, actually that knowledge is a capital asset that's useful. It's not the thing that you're buying. So there is so much that would need to shift, I think, in order to move from the team level of, say, where Scrum can work, and team level agile, where perhaps you can make a product that is usable, desirable, and the other aspects of UX, and meets the correct human factors requirements. But we now need to move to business agility. We need to be able to make sure we're solving the right problems in a timely manner and can do it quick enough that we're not going to get outpaced by the adversary. And looking at how Ukraine has tried to tackle some of these problems by moving the end user and the engineer closer together and trying to disrupt the more traditional sort of siloed and hierarchical acquisition process is incredibly interesting.
So I guess just to bring this bit to a bit of a conclusion, if I put you in a one-to-one, or you've got the chief of the defense staff is sat there going, Matt, I'll give you one thing, or one small group of things, or you've got, say, maybe the new director of the National Armaments Directorate, so somebody who can actually implement what you suggest. What constructive things would you turn around to them and say, right, if you just do this, it puts us on the journey?
Give me one problem and one multidisciplinary team, and I would demonstrate how we can deliver something that is viable, desirable, and feasible quickly. And then if you're impressed by that, we can scale it. Because in order to change, I don't think the business can change. I think a new business in defense needs to grow, and we're seeing pockets of it. But I would like to take a problem and own the problem from early stage discovery, problem discovery, right the way through to it's in the hands of the end user being used, and own whether that, if you're thinking army, the silos from futures, programs, field army, the delivery team. So one small team, short period of time, with one small enough problem, and I will prove how we can do it.
And this is an ideal time to do that as well, with so much change going about, and we are seeing world change. This could be the opportunity for Matt to take over the world.
If Matt's MILUX, no, it would be great. But do you know what? It's probably confession time now, and we can say it. I've had the opportunity to do just this in the last 2 years, where we've been trying to solve a tactical communications problem for Land Special Operations Force and the Rangers, and essentially from that early discovery work that we did, handing over to the two other companies in the consortium, 2IC, a software company, and then CDW, who's our prime, who's a multinational sort of hardware vendor, but their engineers to build something. We've largely been left alone to focus on a problem, go after it ourselves, work with the end users, not have to have onerous meetings on a monthly basis with lots of delays. And they've been able to now sort of at the end pop their heads above the parapet and say, we built you an end-to-end communication system that connects a Ranger right the way through to your enterprise. Isn't this elite access?
Yeah. So you've actually got that case study there raring to go. Fantastic. That's been really, really interesting and really insightful, being able to look at the theories, but also bring it into sharp realization with showing that how you've already done it. So we're going to take our final little break. We're going to get into the final three.
Just before Barry gets to the final three, my name's Nick Rome. Let me tell you about this. Technology in our world is evolving at a phenomenal pace, and keeping up with what that means in the human factors world can be challenging. That's where Human Factors Cast comes in. Human Factors Cast is a weekly podcast that highlights and breaks down stories that are chosen by you, the Human Factors community.
New York State is giving out hundreds of robots as companions for the elderly.
Buttons in cars are safer and quicker to use than touchscreen.
A prototype just achieved a major milestone that actually fits the description of a flying car.
The show provides perspective based on experiences from different domains and different industries. We even cover some of the hottest conferences in the field. On this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference, Neuroergonomics Conference, Human Factors and Ergonomics Society, UXPA International. Join me, Nick Rome.
And me, Barry Kirby.
Every Friday morning when Human Factors Cast drops on YouTube and your favorite podcast directory. And remember,
it depends.
And now I'm going to send it back over to Barry for the final three.
And we are still trying to learn how to use this new interface, so that's interesting. But so what we do with all of our guests is there's the three same questions that we ask everybody. So what is your go-to book or a paper that you use repeatedly as a cornerstone or a touchstone? It can be a technical book or a paper, or it could be fiction. What do you keep going back to?
So as you put me with the request on the spot for one book, I've gone for the one for me that sits right at the very top of the tree, which is The Idea of Fit for Purpose.
Okay.
So it's a book that was written by David Anson and a chap called Alexi, and it has spawned out of the Kanban method. So the Kanban method is very much a delivery method and an continuous improvement method, but this is the view that then looks at it from a product perspective. So whilst the book talks about talks about it with a series of anecdotes and explanations. It's got a sort of a body of knowledge behind it, and I'll just hold up the framework to hopefully explain why I really like it as simply as possible. Is that right at the top? What we're looking at is the three components of a product or service, which are design, implementation, and service delivery. We then look at the metrics, so the key performance indicators, the fitness metrics, the health indicators, the improvement drivers, or my favorite one, which you may be familiar with and might be a whole topic for another podcast, is vanity metrics. So the metrics that we capture that actually mean nothing. And then finally, it's the thing is what are the different common fitness criteria? And this is where you can come with the lens of it doesn't matter what your background is. You can talk about, is it about getting something quickly? Is it about getting it? Is it reliable? So we've got sort of time to market type metrics. We've got convenience type metrics. We've got affordability type metrics. Or is it into more some of the engineering? So is it safety and conformity? So does it meet certain other criteria? So as an overarching framework, I find it is really useful, and it's something that we employ within MILUX as is helping sort of deliver fit for purpose products, but also the delivery system that is fit for purpose at the same time with that right maturity level. So yeah, that's a really long answer to explain why that's my overarching go-to book. And then from there, I've got branches into delivery books. I've got the sort of coaching books. I've got the UX sort of other type books.
See, this is why this sort of thing is great for me as a podcast host, is because I then get good recommendations of what to go and read. So it's an entirely selfish question. If you could go back and chat to young Matt, or in your formative years, be whatever they would be, what advice would you give yourself?
Two pieces of advice. Firstly, don't be afraid to get out of defense, because you'll get more opportunity to learn faster.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, more hands-on. And then secondly, don't spend so much time on the theory. Get out and get some hands-on experience. So I very reflective now that diving really deep into the theory of lean, agile, delivery side of things, looking at the UX, I spend a lot of time in books, on courses, on webinars, and not a lot of time really doing what was important, which was getting out and trying to build something with some end users and learning and getting feedback. So for example, you can read a lot of books about how to conduct a sort of usability testing or a user interview. It's not until you do it and you repeat it and you go through looking at the data and you start pulling out the information that you start to actually get good at it. So I would say to myself, get out of defense, find an industry where you can move fast, and then get some real hands-on experience.
Cool. Yeah, there's definitely something there about you don't know what you know. Every book is great, but the plan doesn't survive first contact until you've done your first exercise, being what it is. So then let's fast forward a whole number of years. You've decided to retire. What would you like to be remembered for?
Advocating for the user. I think I'd like people to say he worked hard, he did well, and at all times he kept trying to make sure that we were trying to improve that end user experience, even if it meant they were doing the hard things, or he was doing.
Brilliant. Matt, thank you ever so much for your time today. This has been fantastic for me to get back in the driving seat and relaunch 1202, but also really useful to be able to get stuck into this quite a tough topic and quite something that is an ongoing discussion and debate. If people want to get in touch with you and maybe learn a bit more about you, maybe engage with you to take on your what MILUX can deliver for their part of the defence or for their business, how would they get in touch with you?
So either through our website, milux.co.uk, or look me up on LinkedIn. I'm normally the person sharing sort of fit for purpose product related content. Please reach out. I'm always up for learning new things, people challenging what I enjoy, people challenging my thinking, because and if you want to get into defense, give me a shout. And if you want to get me out of defense, please give me a shout.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you all for listening and for watching. Do like, comment, and share what you see. Do you agree with Matt's approach, or do you have comments and thoughts about what he's said? Do put it there and we'll do our best to respond. But apart from that, we shall see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to 1202, the Human Factors Podcast. Please do get in touch with your thoughts, questions, and comments. You can contact us on social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook at 1202 Podcast. See you next time. And remember, it's more than just common sense.